Okay, so let's just move on from just cups to the current status of your sustainable checklist for your own brands, like, for staples like tea and coffee, for example, on the
Mm.
packaging that you use, on carbon emissions and waste. What's the status there?
So we have some quite ambitious targets in that space. We're looking for 100% of our own brand packaging to be completely free of unnecessary single-use plastic, as well as being reusable, recyclable, and compostable by 2025. And actually, we're doing it. We've made excellent progress against that. We're already at about 80% single-use plastic free globally, and a lot of our really big regions have already achieved full 100%. So like the UK and Ireland, our German business, even India actually are also 100% sustainable packaging as well. So it's not just those Western markets, which
That's a
I think some
result.
people
Yes.
might assume that's the case. And a lot of that has been driven by, you've seen a lot of regulation. It's a big kind of, emotive issue. So a strong focus area, but we've made a lot of progress there. And thanks again to a lot of innovation in this space as well, we're seeing in packaging. In terms of our ingredients, we're targeting 100% sustainable certification for key ingredients like tea, coffee, cocoa for hot chocolate, palm oil, and fish and seafood. We're making great progress on that. I think we're at about 90% of our tea is certified to standards like Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance. What are we on? We're getting there in terms of things like cage-free eggs as well. Our target is for 100%. We're at about 34% globally, but actually some of our markets are really quite big. Like a lot of our European operations are well over 80% and nearly there. We're hoping that most of the European ones will be 100% by the end of this year. So what we see is that at a global level, the numbers are looking good, but often they're kind of driven by a number of sort of high performing markets and high performing areas. And then it's just making sure some of the other ones that are a little bit slower, it's a little bit more challenging to source these ingredients, particularly in some of our APAC markets. Sourcing cage-free eggs can actually be quite a challenge, even getting the fair trade coffee, that kind of stuff. So we let them that's why it's a 2025 target rather than 23. On our net zero ambition, we're really proud to have achieved a 36% reduction in our scope 1 and 2 emissions this year versus our 2019 baseline. So that's really all about the direct energy that we control, our vehicle use and our refrigerant use. And we're really proud to achieve that reduction since 2019. However, that's just a small part of our footprint. As you said earlier, our wider value chain, supply chain, scope 3 emissions represent nearly 90% of our total footprint. So that's something that we're still focusing on. We're right at the beginning of that journey. And it's really where we need to catalyse action, work with our suppliers, our clients and our brand partners to really focus that as a collaborative effort.
Well, of course, it's not just the key areas you've just covered where sustainable actions count. I mean, sustainability also manifests itself in what you actually build in your respective locations. Can you just give us some examples of this important extra dimension?
Yeah, so the units ourselves, they represent the actual design, build and construction of the units represent about 6% of our total carbon footprint. So it's not massive, but it's still a significant chunk of the footprint. So we're developing a clear work stream for that area to reduce emissions in that space. And a lot of that is building upon the best practice that's already been happening around the business, some of which may have been client driven and others are more about the kind of unit concept itself. So we're focusing on working with partners with green building credentials. So that might be specific certification for architects or contractors, construction contractors. We're looking at procuring materials that have a lower carbon footprint that minimise the impact, such as less concrete and plastic, more natural materials. Also reusing and repurposing elements from old units and bringing that into refurbishments. And looking at how we can use recycled materials as well. And we actually have some really good case studies that we've showcased of where we've used recycled materials and made that part of the whole concept and the whole design feature of the unit. A really great example is a unit that we opened last year in Paris. We wanted to go with the whole railway theme there. So we actually worked with our brand partner there to use boards from recycled train wagons to actually fit out the entire unit, all the furniture, the tables, the chairs, the bar, the countertop, the flooring, everything was made out of recycled materials. And it really added to the feel of the unit, as well as obviously making it more sustainable and reducing emissions. What we're now doing is trying to standardize a lot of that work, get sustainability credentials incorporated into capital investment proposals right at that decision-making stage, so it's really embedded into the way we do things going forwards. And another example we have is our Whiskey Bread bar, which is a bespoke concept we opened in Dublin Airport last year. And the bar itself is all made out of recycled whiskey barrels. So again, it all really features into the whole concept and the feel of the unit, whilst also being more sustainable.
Okay, now moving on, I mean, would you agree that there is an ecological debt, as it were, if a business like SSP's, or any other business for that matter, does not pursue a clear, sustainable path? I mean, do you believe that in today's world, there'll be some reputational damage to a business if genuine sustainable actions are not pursued?
Yes, without doubt, I believe that. And I suppose I'd be out of a job if I didn't believe that, considering my profession. But yeah, I think I've been working in this area for a long time. And what I've seen is how sustainability has moved on from being seen as a niche area of the business and very much a cost of doing business to now actually being seen as something that's almost crucial for your license to operate. You know, I truly believe that any business that is not doing anything seriously about sustainability will really suffer in the long term. What you've seen in the last few years, particularly in the investment community, is how mainstream it's gone there. They are measuring, they are assessing companies, assessing their portfolios, looking at the sustainability credentials of the businesses they want to invest in. People like Larry Fink from BlackRock, big proponents of sustainable investment. And essentially, if you're not meeting their requirements, you start getting screened out of funds. And that's not just a reputational damage, that actually starts affecting your share price. It starts affecting your relationship with shareholders. So I think the recognition is now that, yes, it is absolutely core and it needs to be embedded into your business processes and your risk management.
So let me ask the flip side of that. I mean, do you actually see sustainability as a genuine business accelerator?
Yes, without doubt. There is clear opportunities for business growth that you can gain through sustainability, whether that's winning new clients and brands by positioning yourself as a sustainable partner of choice, or that's attracting the whole new generation of conscious consumers out there who are really thinking about sustainability with the products and the brands that they choose. You're also seeing a lot more now of that kind of financial modelling of the impacts of sustainability. And I think that's where the challenge has been in the past, to really put a value on what you're doing and actually sort of show that to the finance guys, show that to your CFO. And what we've seen with initiatives like the Task Force for Financial Related Climate Disclosures means that you're now not only modelling the risks of what the financial impact will be of not doing sustainability actions, so essentially linking to your previous question, but also crucially brings in the opportunities element. So it's actually financially modelling what's the opportunity in terms of attracting these conscious consumers, in terms of winning new business, when we're seeing more and more clients put sustainability credentials right into those contracts and those tender processes. So yeah, I think most certainly. And I think there's just lots of other accelerators that you see with sustainability, just in becoming a better run business, a more efficient business. You know, if you reduce your costs by reducing your energy use, you increase efficiency, you increase employee satisfaction, all those kind of things just make great business sense. And I think the value of that is now being seen a lot more.
Okay, let's just deep dive a little more. How do you then effectively communicate the core principles of sustainability, both internally and externally?
I mean, I don't think it's massively different, to be honest, in how you do it between internal and external. I think what's core to it is having those really strong foundations and being sure of where you're at. And that means having really good measurable targets with clear commitments, proper performance indicators and metrics that you can measure and report against and report your progress, because that's really the kind of proof points that people need. It's no longer kind of just you can just talk about one project that actually is only happening in one tiny area of the business and has no impact globally. People want to actually see what impact that is making. But then what you've got to do is then translate that into what I always talk about, stories of change. And that's where it's about turning what can seem like quite intangible concepts in sustainability, making it practical and real for people by telling those stories, telling those case studies. And I always think my role as a sustainability professional is as much about communications as it is about the sustainability part. And like I say, I have to translate very, very technical stuff into clear and engaging content that actually inspires people. It's really about winning hearts and minds. And like I say, it's about practical actions and solutions. You know, when I talk internally to around the business, if I'm talking to a purchasing director or a commercial director, they're like, great, I get the idea, I get the concept, but what do you want me to do? And that's what people want. And that's what I find works best in those communications of giving the concept, giving the reason why, but then really going into this is actually what difference it makes on the ground, and here's the results.
Well, one of the aids that you use is like a lunch and learn program, don't you?
Yes, I mean, there's lots of different ways. So we do lunch and learn sessions. I did my first one only a couple of months into the business, which was quite good fun and great to sort of engage with people and know people. And I think those are also about two-way conversations. So it's not just about communicating out and sort of, you know, sending this thing. It's actually about getting the feedback. You know, we operate a Retazza unit within our headquarters here in London. And we're looking at, we brought in new paper lids for all the coffee cups that we're trialing to, you know, will basically work to even eliminate that kind of final layer of plastic. And I was chatting to the girl working in the unit, and she was just saying, oh, I feel so much better about my job, seeing this and doing this. And she was really excited and really engaged. And I think it's getting that feedback as well, talking right down to people at the front line, understanding their perceptions and what they see and how we can actually engage them in what we're doing. Because at the ultimate, you know, it's all down to them. They're the ones on the ground making these things happen.
Now, of course, you also positively promote health and well-being within the business as part of the overall process.
Yes, I mean, we look at health and well-being from both a customer and a colleague perspective. So from the customer perspective, it's about creating those healthier, more nutritious dishes that they want to choose, those really great tasting dishes, and also giving them the information that they need to make informed choices and satisfy their dietary needs. When it comes to our colleagues, our HR team, I can't take credit for all this. Our HR team have been doing an amazing job on really kind of looking at what the different practices already are around all our different operations globally and bringing that together into a sort of what they're referring to as their global well-being framework that's looking at, you know, all aspects of physical, mental and financial well-being and recognizing how these issues are connected and interrelated. So they've been doing some amazing work in that space. Last year we had a global mental health campaign that was a sort of month-long global campaign that really focused on sort of opening up conversations so that colleagues felt comfortable speaking about mental health challenges they have and giving our line managers the tools to start spotting signs among their employees and opening up those conversations themselves.
And what about diversity and human rights? That's another key platform for you.
Yes. I mean, we are if you look at our footprint and our makeup, we are very proud to be a very diverse global company already. I think over 50% of our global workforce are women. We have many, many, many different nationalities and ethnicities and sexual identities all across the business. But we do recognise that breadth of diversities does start to narrow once you hit that kind of senior leadership level. So there's a lot of focus, there's targets in place about increasing the number of women in senior leadership roles. There's also a lot of work about really creating that kind of inclusive culture environment for people to work in. So they established our Global Inclusion Council last year, which is chaired by our Chief Procurement Officer and includes people from all around the business globally, looking at all the different initiatives going on, how we can create more enablers. We're setting up networks like a women's menopause network, our LGBT networks, all of that kind of stuff of really trying to foster that environment. And it's very much an ongoing piece of work.
I mean, it's quite clear that SSP's commitment to sustainability, from what you've said, from everything you've said, is real and tangible. I mean, it's also evolving daily. Can you just quickly go over the short-term targets that you have to 2025 and beyond?
So at the moment, the majority of our targets are for 2025. I could list many of them, but I think that would take up this whole video. So just a few highlights is that we're aiming for at least 30% of our meals for our own brands to be plant-based or vegetarian by 2025. I've talked previously about getting sustainable certification for 100% of our key ingredients like tea, coffee and fish, 100% cage-free eggs, and 100% own brand sustainable packaging. But I think it's our net zero target for 2040 that really is the umbrella that brings a lot of this together. So whatever we're doing around sustainable certification, around food waste reduction, around sustainable packaging, around emissions, all that contributes to net zero. It's all part of that net zero piece. So we're very focused on that 2040 deadline, the key milestones that we need to achieve along the way. And already I'm starting to think about, okay, we've got targets ending in 2025. Next year, I will probably spend a lot of time looking at what new targets we need to bring in place, how we extend our scale of ambition, and how we take account of new and emerging issues. You know, sustainability, as you say, is constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. And so your strategy always needs to evolve to reflect.
Well, one last question, Verity. I mean, if there were 3 key learnings that you could share with the viewing audience, what would they be?
I guess the first one is linking back to what I've just said about sustainability is constantly evolving. The pace of change, I'd say, is currently unprecedented. I've worked in this area for many, many years, and the pace of change we've just seen over the last 3 or 4 years is, you know, far outweighs what happened in the previous 10. You know, there's new issues, there's new standards, there's new regulations emerging all the time. So that means that your strategy, your targets, the approach that you take can't stand still. And I think that's quite hard for a lot of businesses. You know, they spend a lot of time developing a strategy and targets, and then suddenly somebody's going to them, well, we need a new target on this now. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell me that 12 months ago? It's like, well, this has come up and this is a new issue, or this is something we need to change. It's a very dynamic field, and it certainly keeps us on our toes in the sustainability profession at trying to keep up with this and advising the business on how to evolve and bring those insights in, let them know what's coming up on the horizon, what's emerging. I think the second thing I've learned, certainly from all my time working in sustainability, is it can't be a siloed area of the business. I think in the past, you may have seen organisations with really, really big sustainability teams, but they were the only people in the organisation who were actually thinking about sustainability at all. If it's really going to work, it's got to be embedded. It's got to be cross-functional. You've got to get every single person in the organisation, whether they're making a decision about sourcing, whether they're making a decision about what materials to use for fitting out a unit, if they bring in that sustainability question into their mind with each decision that they're making. And finally, I'd say my key learning is transparency is key. I think a lot of organisations traditionally don't really want to talk about a topic if they haven't worked out everything they're going to do around it. They haven't got completely confident in their targets, in their approach. And, it's something we're doing internally, but we're not going out there. But what you actually find is that particularly with investors who are now really, really scrutinizing what companies are doing in this space, if you're silent on an issue, the default assumption is you're not doing anything. You haven't even thought about it. So in sustainability, a lot of what we do is talk about, okay, this is coming up. This is an emerging issue we're aware of. This is a challenge for us. We haven't quite worked out our space, but this is what we're doing. And my experience is a lot of stakeholders are quite forgiving of that. They're understanding of that. But you need to tell them, you need to be honest, and you need to be open about those challenges and not just pretend that something's not happening and stay silent on a topic.
That's a suitable point at which to end this remarkable conversation. Excellent interview, Verity. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, no, thank you. I very much enjoyed it.